This is Binod Shankar and you're listening to the Real Finance Mentor podcast from therealfinancementor.com. The Real Finance Mentor is your go-to resource for insight and inspiration on careers in finance, CFA and more. I would think, why this podcast? Well, my goal is to deliver insight and inspiration for your finance career by making it, one, relatable. This is not theoretical stuff. We zero in on the critical, practical issues. Number two, authentic. No bullshit, no sidestepping. The topics, guests, and questions are all from that perspective. And number three, take a chartered accountant and CFA charter holder. Add 17 plus years as a corporate warrior. Mix in 10 years of entrepreneurship. Throw in a decade of full-time CFA training. Add speaking, mentoring, cycling, and mountaineering. And that's me. Welcome to the Real Finance Mentor, or as I call it, RFM.
Hi everyone, this is Binod Shankar here with the Real Finance Mentor podcast to delivering insight and inspiration for your finance careers. We've got a special guest today who's going to speak about various matters regarding career and tips for youngsters. I'm going to introduce today Ketaki Sharma, who is the founder and CEO of Algorithm Research, a bespoke analytics and research firm based out of the UAE, which has been part of the Y Combinator Startup School, as well as a winner of various regional entrepreneurship awards. Ketakis is also a senior economist who's been tracking the MENA and India markets for over a decade. Prior to founding Algorithm Research, she was involved in setting up the research desks from scratch at two of the leading banks in the UAE, and has also worked with Nomura Securities as India Economist in Mumbai. Ketaki has a sovereign rating background, having worked with Standard & Poor's as a rating analyst covering the MENA EMEA region. So welcome, Ketaki, to the show.
Thanks so much, Binod, for having me. I'm really excited.
Thank you. I'm going to sort of start with a curveball of a question, right? What drew you towards what I shall call the dismal science of economics?
Well, so economics is something that is so relevant to everyone's daily lives, right? So I think the relevance part of it, the aspect of its utility to your improving your daily life, improving your financial aspects. So for instance, understanding personal finance has a lot to do with understanding of economics. So the interconnectedness of these two streams, I think that got me really interested to begin with. And then of course, the fact that you can actually forecast consumer behavior, you can understand mass trends. I think those things got me really into economics. So I wouldn't call economics science. I would call it social science because it studies people. And science tends to be exact, whereas social science is never an exact science. And it's because different people have different preferences, right? So when you have different preferences, there cannot be an exact yes or no. So is cold weather, what is cold weather? And is it good for us? That's a very personal choice, right? So that just as you can't have a specific answer to something, similarly, you can't have a specific solution for everyone. That's why like economics is not an exact science. So I love that part of it, where it's not exact, but still it does a pretty good job of solving a lot of problems in the financial world. So I think those things are very attractive to me.
Interesting. I've also gone through your profile, and I noticed that you've picked up Python and AI-related skills, right? And you apply these at work. You mentioned to me a few days ago, the recent example being the Saudi Arabia report. So I've got two questions for you here. Why is learning these so important these days? Now, how did you learn this?
Okay, that's an interesting question. So I think the world is increasingly moving towards tapping that immense amount of data that is available digitally. So back in say early 2000s, we had adopted this Excel-based modeling techniques, right? And back then we would rely on, say, the company information that is released or say government data that is released to make forecasts. But in today's day and age, there is so much more data that's available on the internet through digital sources that relying on just these would be like, leaving that immense amount of wealth on the table. So you've got to like tap into that set of information source as an important information source. And in order to do so, you've got to learn those skills. So for instance, you should know basic programming skills. It's no longer optional to know it. I think it's more like a life skill. It's like learning to cook. So you must learn how to code. It's like you're learning to use the computer. So I think those are skills that you've got to adapt to. It's no longer optional. So we've got to remember that it's no longer optional. You've got to learn it, and the sooner the better. In terms of the next question as to where I got the skills from, so everything is available online. I learned these through the lockdown period last year, and from this university called Georgia Tech. And the course was done by this amazing professor called David Joyner. So I would recommend this to all those who are going to start from scratch and are confused about where to begin with. I think this course is the course for beginners in programming, because the course is designed for absolutely new programmers.
Interesting. Now, most of the audience for this podcast, Ketaki, are young finance professionals, chartered accountants, MBAs, CFA charter holders, or CFA candidates. And a lot of them work in or aspire to work in credit or equity research, sell side or buy side. So,
Yeah.
how do the above skills and those courses that you mentioned, how exactly help a young finance professional break into or stand out in these two areas of credit and equity research?
Yeah, that's a great question. So like I said, equity research, the way it was done earlier was the DCF modeling, Excel-based modeling. Now that just taps into one specific data source and leaves this immense pool of data available digitally. So I think it's very important now. In fact, that's the way to stand out. Everyone has been doing Excel-based modeling. Everyone knows the DCF. Every single person has been doing it for decades. What is it that you bring to the table? How do you stand out? So if you know how to program, if you know how to tap into big data, if you know how to do basic statistics, you are much better prepared to face the future finance industry. So you've got to learn these skills ASAP. So I would say that so far what we are seeing with the fourth industrial revolution is that quickly things are getting digitized. Everything. In fact, a lot of finance jobs have been eaten away by digitization. So in this day and age, you've got to know how do you make sense of the equity markets, and cycles have become shorter, right? So there is much more happening, and there's a lot of data to process, and everything is interconnected. It's globally, everything is interconnected. So you can't just study the impact of something like monetary policy in your country in isolation. You've got to link it up with multiple things happening across the globe, which wasn't the case 20 years ago. So the world is far more interconnected. Impact of monetary policy in the US or impact of fiscal policy in the US can be felt everywhere in the world. And therefore, those should be built into the model. And there is data lying out there on the internet that should become a part of the model for you to have a better recommendation for your client.
I'm going to sort of ask a follow-up question on that, because to segue from what you mentioned about data, Ketaki, because and this is an important application-related question. So So you have a young finance professional who's got a CFA or a CA, and suppose has learned coding, and he knows his financial concepts and economics and accounting and things like that. But then
Right.
what you are basically hinting at without mentioning is things like non-traditional sources of data, high frequency data. So we have this question. So I have a couple of questions for you, and of course I appreciate that you can't go into great detail. But where do you get this data? How do you know about the quality and integrity of this data? How do you clean up the data? And what I'm trying to say is there's a huge process to be followed between identifying the data and finally getting it in front of your client for decision-making purposes. So broadly speaking, what is the thinking around this, and how should somebody think around this? I've heard words being tossed around like commercial acumen, apart from the basic skills like data analysis and Excel and programming. So where does this leave this finance professional? What does he need to know apart from just the skills that we mentioned?
So the first part about the credibility of data, so let's address that first. So for instance, so you are taking your data from, say, Google, right? Is that a credible source? Yes. So similarly from YouTube, from Twitter, from Instagram. So all this analysis is, say, based on the IT giants, right? So from Facebook, Instagram, Google, YouTube. And your analysis is based on real consumer interaction with posts, for instance, right? So these are actually revealed preferences. These are the preferences of consumers that they have said out of their own accord, and they haven't really been asked in a survey as to what their opinion is, where they have to care about being politically correct or pretending to be something. Here they are their actual selves, or liking a comment. So when we are talking about taking data, we are not talking about taking data from some random site we have no idea about. We're talking about taking data from Twitter, from Instagram, from Facebook, from all these tech giants. It's like trusting the company that has released their data, right? So if you can release, if you can trust the data released by say P&G on their performance for the year, you can trust this as well. So I think these are credible sources, and that's where most of your analysis would be based out of. So these are big data sources, and you take data from these established firms, and you analyze this data. You don't present your client with the data dump. It's a data dump. If you give it to your client, it's a data dump. You analyze this data for the questions you want answers to. So you basically look at it, analyze it, and you should. And that's where the whole thing is, to develop the skills to handle this kind of data, which is big data, and be able to clean it, be able to analyze it, be able to perform statistical operations on it, be able to read what it means. So all these skills, so you can no longer be just a finance professional or an economist. You've got to be a programmer, you've got to be a statistician, you've got to be a bit of a data scientist. So the world probably needs more of generalists, not like generalist managers, right? Like generalists with skills, with more than soft skills. So that's what I mean when I say that you've got to build on these skills.
I like it when you're economist. I think you have this unique ability to capture complex psychological phenomenon in a few words. So I like to have phrased revealed preferences.
Yes, that's a very popular economics jargon, and it is what it is.
It is what it is, exactly. Now I want to talk about and go on a little bit of a different track here, and talk about something that members in the audience, especially women, would like to hear. And that is, in your experience, Ketaki, what are the challenges specific to a woman in finance or in economics that you think exist? And during your own journey, both corporate and entrepreneurial, how did you tackle these?
That's an interesting question, but a very often, I think it's a frequently asked question. I would say that the challenges faced by any woman professional, any professional, especially a woman, are pretty much the same at the boardroom level as they are at the household level. So it's not like that's a new thing that you are facing. So for me, I think the main question to be, the whole world has discussed so much of this, that what are the issues that you face. I think we've talked about the issues, but we hardly ever talk about how we can solve them. I would say that that as a woman, we have a lot of power in the sense that we can alter how we behave and how we raise our children at a household level, right? And that means preparing your kids for the future. And when I say kids, I mean kids, both boys and girls. So while we are preparing our daughters to take on responsibility of running a household financially, we have to prepare our sons to take on responsibility of the family much more than they are doing it now. So there's a lot of, I think we can change things in a big way through how we raise our children, so that 20 years from now, it'll be a very different scene. We won't have to ask this question anymore. It is different. It is harder. And I think we are probably, because we've been seeing it from childhood, sometimes we don't really, we don't really see it. We don't really feel it as much. I think what really helps would be to be able to just go on without worrying too much about what it is. Maybe I'm a woman. Maybe that's why I'm being differentiated or discriminated against. So I think the point here is that the solution to the problem is to alter how we raise our children, both boys and girls. And I think having a solutions-minded approach to it would be more helpful than to just generally talk about the problem, because everyone is talking about it but not doing anything about it. So I think having that solution in mind would be, that's my solution to the problem.
Yeah, so I understand the mindset, Ketaki, and I understand your answer, but you still haven't given the answer of how did you tackle this specifically? What was your approach at various stages? Because you would have encountered situations
like I said, Binod. So when you see issues, when you're faced with a certain set of issues from your childhood, so if there's discrimination, it just doesn't pop up when you are a professional. You face those issues growing up. Like if you get excellent marks in school, oh wow, you've done well, without the kind of support that maybe a son would have, right? Or say, like how the society is, like they would probably be, oh, you've done well, you're too intelligent for a girl, those kind of comments, you've heard them before. So I think you develop that thick skin. You no longer hear it. So that has really helped me. Like, I know I've heard this before, but that's their problem, not mine,
Interesting. So that's exactly the answer I was looking for. So I think the answer I found is probably, to capture in one word, is resilience.
Probably, yes. But
right.
We women are extremely resilient.
Right. So that is about your experience as a woman and as an economist. Let's talk about what prompted you to leave the corporate world and start on your own? Because that's, especially in this region, quite unusual, where most expats come here on a 2 or 3 or 5 year contract, try to save some money and either go back home or head west to Australia or Canada or immigrate, whatever. But you are probably an outlier in the sense of having attempted entrepreneurship. So, what was the trigger?
I think multiple triggers. So, of course, I think there was this deep desire to start a business someday. That was like a childhood dream. But I think what triggered it, that the timing, in terms of timing, was the fact that I had given birth. I was a new mom, and I was commuting from Dubai to Abu Dhabi every single day, and I was sleep deprived and overworked, and it was that deadly combination where I had to just take a call on what I wanted to do with my life, whether to kill myself or to give it a go and see and start something of my own. I was involved in setting up the research desk at two banks already, so I had done something similar with my last two jobs. So I thought maybe if I were to start a research desk of my own in this country, it may work. And I had built that network of clients, and I thought I could tap into those. And yeah, I just decided to take that leap of faith. It wasn't as calculated as it may sound right now, but back then I just wanted to do it because it felt like the right opportunity to do so. So yeah, it was a massive leap of faith. It wasn't easy, and then it is more difficult, especially when you've worked for 8 9 years in a corporate job. It's harder because you have developed that employee mindset, which is very different from an entrepreneurial mindset, right? So it was unlearning and learning a lot of other new skills. So it has taken its time, and today, in fact, coincidentally, we are 5 years old as an organization, and I mean, I told myself I'll give myself 2 years. If it works, we'll go ahead. If it doesn't, I'll just look for a job, and you know that'll be it. So 5 years down the line, still going strong, touch wood.
You mentioned something very interesting. I was listening carefully to you about the difference between the employee mindset and the entrepreneurial mindset. I want to dig a little bit into that because quite a few of my former students, ex colleagues, friends are probably in their 30s and 40s, and for lack of a better word, stuck in their career at VP or director or senior manager level in a bureaucratic organization where they can't really be authentic or free or make an impact. And they would love to start their own business. But of course, there are hurdles. So, can you please tell me more in detail of what you have experienced as the critical differences between an employee mindset and entrepreneurial mindset?
That's a great question, Vinod. Actually, that's a really deep question. So I would when I say developing an entrepreneurial mindset, I don't necessarily mean that you've got to be an entrepreneur to develop that mindset. In fact, you can do very well. I mean, if you develop it as an employee in certain roles, it can be of great help even as an employee. So I would say an employee and an entrepreneurial mindset is one wherein you are open to new ideas. You have a very open-minded approach to solving problems, and then going all for it. So if you suppose someone you've had an interaction with someone who's narrating their way of solving a particular problem, and that's an insight, right? That's a novel way of thinking for you. You somehow decide to experiment it, and then you don't have the skills, right? So you decide either to hire, or you get like more team members within the organization to help you implement it, or you develop those skills on your own and implement and have the necessary power in place, have the necessary authority in place in the organization to do so. So I think to be able to do this, you don't have to necessarily quit your job. No way. I'm not at all recommending that. What I'm trying to say is that by you could be working anywhere. You could be working for yourself. You could be working for another organization, but you could still have an entrepreneurial mindset, and which means that being open to new ideas, being open to experiment, and being okay with failure, because failure helps you learn and pivot. I mean, you view failure as a learning point, and you learn that, and you change, you pivot. So, okay, this doesn't work. Maybe this will, but you keep going on. You don't stop. So that's the mindset that I'm talking about.
Now, of course, you mentioned you've completed 5 years, Ketaki, in business. So, congratulations. You're long past your 2-year milestone. So, I think you're well on the way to entrepreneurship success, if not already there. Tell us, I think you've already mentioned a few points, but regardless, tell me more about, and I'll be more specific, tell me more about the top 3 factors for that success that you've achieved with algorithm research.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, exactly. So I think it'll be about being open-minded, right? I think that was, so I was just a researcher. So I was into research from the very beginning. I was trained to do things a certain way, think in a certain way, and, present our findings in a certain way. When you're on your own, you don't have a brand to support you. And when you're working with a brand, a big brand, you don't realize the power that it gives you, right? You don't realize how it strengthens your voice as an analyst. And when you decide to set up on your own, that's when you realize that you are no longer the brand. You are a person who has to build that brand to be able to convince people to listen to you. Why should someone listen to you and not to, say, an economist at say a leading firm? So those were the things that you start with. So I think one of the first things I realized was that you can't take anything for granted, and you've got to work from scratch. Be ready, be like a novice. Like you can't treat yourself like, oh, I was an economist with such and such place. I have worked with such and such organizations. Well, good for you. But what do you bring to the table? How are you different? What is special about you? Where is your niche? Why should we listen to you? So ultimately, it's going to be your work that speaks for itself. And therefore, you've got to make your work stand out and make itself heard, right? It should be that good. And that's where I talk about, upskilling, coming up with things that no one else is doing right now. And it's very new to the region. Like what the kind of research that we are producing is very new to the region. So I think that has the fact that we are ready to experiment, fail, repeat, and improvise and repeat. And we've been doing that for 5 years. And I think that helps a lot.
Yes, the combination of many things, as always, like you said, right? I love that phrase again, which you mentioned, the fact that when you are an analyst working with a renowned brand, you just don't realize the influence that brand has on the strength of your voice as an analyst, right? I think you hit the nail on the head. And stepping out and setting up a brand from scratch is quite a challenge. Now, you must have had quite a lot of ups and downs, right? Not just in your entrepreneurship career and building a brand, but going back, in your corporate career as well, like most people.
Yeah.
And a lot of the audience are youngsters. They have gone through that, or they will go through those issues in corporate, and some of them struggle to keep themselves motivated, right? And sometimes they drop out or they fall behind. How did you keep yourself motivated and stay focused? What are the specific strategies that you used, and probably with a focus on your corporate life specifically?
Sure. So I think the passion for the subject. So firstly, I just love economics, and doing what you love helps you keep motivated, right? So I think it's important to do what you believe in. It's important to do what you love, and that helps with the motivation. There is no real secret recipe there. But I think overall, in general, everything is interrelated. So your emotional well-being, your physical well-being, your spiritual well-being, all these are interconnected. And I think having a more, you can't be just doing one thing. You can't be like just just your job title. You've got to be much more as a person. You've got to be like a curious person wanting to know more. So for instance, if you are someone who's into photography, you could do that. I mean, that can provide that necessary channel for say for emotional well-being. You tend to find that peace when you are taking photographs or maybe editing photographs. So I think so I have many interests. So for instance, like I paint, I ski, I do yoga, I swim, I've learned to play golf. And these are not like, so apart from painting, which I've been doing since I was a kid, a lot of these are skills that I picked up over the years. So every year I pick up a new skill. And last year it was golf. So I started with golf, and then I tend to carry on, pursue it further. So I think when you learn something new, or when you are constantly challenging yourself in any field, it kind of, in a strange way, gives you that perspective to find out your way, or maybe to discover a new path in what you are trying, what you are trying to do in, say, your professional life. So for instance, there were while learning new things, such as while learning to play golf, there was this important skill that I learned. Like, I have never been a sports person really, but last year when I started playing golf, and we tend to like have these partners, so two of us play in a team. I just realized how important it is to have a team member with complementary skill sets. So you are completely relying on them for certain shots, and they are completely relying on me for certain shots. So you've got to get your part right in order to win the game, right? So those are small insights that you basically find doing something, and then you say, oh, but this is relevant for me even as an entrepreneur, and this is so relevant for me in life in general. And it's just that, you, apart from the fact that you are venting out your, whatever the stress in your muscles, etc., it's releasing, you're also learning things that you would have not learned otherwise. So I think having like a multi-dimensional personality, or having like multiple interests, is important, because it helps you in whatever you are doing. It takes you further in every stream, essentially.
Yeah, I suppose that also covers what I was thinking in terms of hobbies, or the importance of hobbies, and the importance of having a proper work-life balance, and the impact of that on physical and mental wellness. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, of course, the three things, at least three things, let's put it this way, that struck me about you in the long conversation we had last week and this conversation, is that you come out as remarkably confident, articulate, and engaging. Now, these are traits that you don't normally see. Especially, I have not seen that in many of my community of finance professionals, young finance professionals, and fresh graduates who often struggle to demonstrate these traits of being confident, articulate, engaging, and hence lose out at interviews, group discussions, job opportunities, presentations, you name it, right? And that's not limited to just youngsters. You see that all the way to people in their 30s and 40s. So what I'm very curious to know about and what you could share with us is how did you develop these? Do you recall how this came about? I mean, surely part of it is genetic, but part of it is also upbringing, and part of it is also what you have done to yourself, I suppose, in terms of self-development.
Yeah, well, so first, thank you for all those lovely compliments. It's nice because when you have that imposter syndrome, you don't really you're constantly doubting yourself. But what I can say is that there are two ways. I've heard a lot of people saying that fake it till you make it, but it doesn't work for me. Like I can't fake it till I make it, and especially in my line of work, I don't think you should do it because it's so easily it's you just read the report and it's easy to get catch that. So you can't really do that. In fact, it is counterproductive because you lose that credibility. So for me, it wasn't at all like that. For me, it was more like doing things that I loved, and then just being just trying to upskill, be the best in whatever I decide to take, and give it that time because it doesn't nothing happens overnight. Be patient, but be persistent. I think that really helped. And yeah, I mean, I know that for a lot of people and in a lot of professions, fake it till you make it works. And I mean, you've got to try it for yourself. So if that works for you, you should definitely do it. But if you think that by for you, if you're genuinely good, if you're like training to be good, if you're persistent, I think that helps in building that confidence that, oh no, I know this. I know how to do this. I know how to implement this, something that my counterparts would not be able to do. So being good at your work helps you become more confident. And I mean, generally being happy also, helps you become more confident. So whatever makes you happy, whatever makes you feel fulfilled, I think you should try and do more of that.
Did you have mentors at various stages of your career who probably pointed in the right direction or sort of groomed you or helped you develop yourself? Do you recall any such instance?
I think so, yes. So in my working career, so I don't think I would go to them and say that they were my mentors, but I've learned a lot from them. I mean, there was not a formal mentor-mentee relationship, but I would always tap into some of my bosses uh, during my corporate career who really helped me through. Leading by example was really really important in my career. So there were two of my bosses who were incredibly articulate, incredibly good at their jobs. So both had different plus points. One was very articulate, the other was so diligent, so perseverant that she just outshone everyone. So I've learned different things from different bosses of mine, and I think those were actually my mentors. And I know that these days they have these in the corporate world where you have like this mentor mentee thing. But I wasn't, there was no formal agreement per se.
So, the last question.
Sure.
Right. So, of course, now we've run out of time, and I wish we could go on for a lot more and ask you more questions and explore your fascinating journey as economist and corporate warrior and entrepreneur. But I must ask you, like I ask all my podcast guests, right? What are your three top tips for youngsters on education and career based on your own experience?
So number one is read, and read. So there's no shortcut there. You've got to read all the amazing books out there, and there are plenty depending on what are your interests. So if you're interested in something and you want to excel, there are no shortcuts. You've got to read those books. There's a wealth of information, wealth of knowledge out there that's so easily, it's so well documented. It's right there for you. So I think number one is to read, read, and read. And number two would be to like, so if you have role models, it's so easy to access them now in, in this day and age. YouTube is there for everyone. It's for free. So if you want to say, if you're inspired by Warren Buffett, you can any day go and look him up on YouTube, listen to his talks, listen to his most recent talks. So for instance, if you're someone who's looking for tips on, say, financial markets, you look it up, look him up, look up your, heroes, and just go ahead, listen to them. So having those greats, having those professionals so accessible to us is a blessing, and it's free of cost. What could be better? So go ahead, listen to them. And third, I would say, is for all those young guys and girls there, go and intern. So if you are wondering what it means to be, say, a data scientist, stop wondering, start acting. Go there, take up an internship, learn it. If you're wondering what it means to be an analyst, apply to all these positions globally. Everyone today is working virtually. So say you're in India and you want to work with someone in the US, it's possible today. Go and apply there to any firm you want to. Go to all these websites, use LinkedIn, use AngelList, go and apply, talk to people, and get that internship. Know what it is to be a data scientist, know what it is to be an equity researcher, and then take a call. We did not have this option when we were their age, but that's the opportunity you have, and make the most of it. So I think being aware of that opportunity is important, and then making the most of it is equally important. So I think those are my top 3 tips.
Right. Thank you so much, Ketaki. Thank you so much for sparing the time for today's interview. I'm so glad I connected with you, a few weeks ago. Never knew that it would come to today, and a very interesting and insightful interview, hopefully for the listeners. I think it's quite impressive what you've achieved, both in corporate career and in entrepreneurship. And to have a young female Indian entrepreneur succeeding in the region is, I think, a matter of not just pride, but also hopefully should lead to introspection and inspiration for youngsters who want to go down that path if they wish to do so. And know that, probably you're your own limitation. And quite a few useful tips in this podcast, Ketaki. Thank you so much once again. And I wish you the very best of yourself and algorithm research over the next few years. And hopefully I'll see more of your reports on LinkedIn. Saudi Arabia was previously, and now Turkey next. And then what next? I don't know.
Thanks so much, Binod. It's been an absolute pleasure. I have been seeing your posts on LinkedIn. And even though we were, first level connections, we did not really connect. But I would follow your posts pretty regularly, and impressive stuff, great stuff that you're, bringing out for the kids out there. We didn't have it when we were growing up. So you're doing a lot of good work. Vinod, keep it up. And thanks so much for your time today. Thanks so much for this opportunity.
Thanks, Ketaki.
Podcast is brought to you by The Real Finance Mentor. Thank you so much for listening. And I really hope you found it insightful and inspirational. If you did enjoy this episode, please drop us a review and spread the word. And be sure to check out more exclusive content on therealfinancementor.com and my LinkedIn profile, which is Binod Shankar CFA. Let's keep in touch. Just add your name to the mailing list on therealfinancementor.com, and we'll tell you about new episodes, plus book reviews, upcoming events, and blogs. Till the next time, onwards and upwards.